That was the bird's name.
Gandalf.
And Michelle. Michelle is the human's name.
Yeah.
I remembered a human's name.
Yes. Yay! Win for Jamie.
Welcome to another episode of BirdTricks Tuesday. We are continuing with our theme about being around flighted birds, flight training, and everything that kind of revolves around it, because whether you plan to get into flight training or not, somehow people just end up outside with their birds, whether it's by accident, coincidence, or intentional. So it's always good to have the information, no matter how you got into the situation that you got into. So this month's topic is...
talking about off-limits locations. So those are both physical off-limits locations that we have heard about a lot of people flying at that you really shouldn't. You should think them through. And then there's also self-imposed off-limits locations that are more along the lines of, hey, I don't want my bird landing on cars or in trees, and how you deal with that.
And keep in mind, this is going to be different for everybody because we all have different types of lifestyles. So for example, our friend Kai has an outdoor free-flighted bird, which is a Moluccan cockatoo, and he rides, what are those things called?
It's a bike, but is it a bacaque, I think it's called?
I think that's what it's called. Bacaque? Maybe that's more what it is. It's one of those things, I believe he got it from, was it Thailand?
Indonesia or Thailand. This is the most information we're going to give you right here.
Yeah.
No idea what we're even talking about.
We super know what we're talking about. Anyways, my point is he lives in San Francisco and he rides one of these in an effort to earn his living, and he gives people rides. Now, Pooh Bear, his Moluccan cockatoo, goes with him. So in his case, he wants his bird to actually sit and stay, or perch and stay, on this, which could be deemed as like a bicycle or a type of car. So it really depends on, like, everybody's off-limit locations or things are going to be a little bit varied and different. So keep in mind.
Yeah, and in one of the episodes of One Day Miracles, one of the off-limits locations was this African gray kept flying to this kind of flat lamp that was, it almost looked like a suspended glass dinner plate that was sitting there and then had wires coming off of it, and the bird was always wanting to land there, and that was something that really irritated the owners, and they were like, hey, we don't want the bird to land there. So even if it's indoor flying, and there's still going to be off-limits locations that you don't want your bird to land on. Or I think if we look a little bit more specifically, the reason behind why you don't want your animal to land there is because oftentimes you can't get them off of it. So just like we've gone through with the example of our friend who used to train killer whales at a very famous theme park, used to be in the show, they had the situation where the whale would go to the bottom of the tank all the time because it didn't want to train with a certain trainer. Well, they just simply trained the whale to go to the bottom of the tank and then never cued it. Well, they seldom cued it. They cued it just enough that the animal still did it as a behavior that was trained, or a trick, but it was
it
totally took the fun out of it.
Literally. So yeah, so I just want you guys to be open-minded that these off-limit locations that we talk about may not be the same for everybody, but the general training techniques and stuff still apply.
Yeah. So the first ones that we'll go over are just the when you're outdoors, the locations that you really shouldn't fly in. I've heard about a trainer out there who flew in a windmill area, wind generator, right, and lost a bird that way. Got hit by the fan from the windmill. Not a very intelligent move. So, is that the bird's fault? No, it's the owner's fault. You shouldn't be flying in an area, you wouldn't try to fly your bird through an industrial fan, so why the heck would you fly it there, right? I mean, that's essentially what he did.
I just got a way worse visual when you said that one than the windmill, but yeah.
So let's take it to an inside location. I heard about this with a magician at a birthday party, made the dove appear, and poof, the dove disappeared when you hit the ceiling fan. So these are things that you need to look at. Now, I don't think that magician got hired back for the next birthday party.
It's like a Different type of birthday party.
Terrible. But those are things that, you know, there are household dangers people need to think about, and there's also outdoor dangers that people need to think about. Just as you wouldn't want your bird to land on top of the cupboards because you may have exposed wiring or extension cords or rope lighting is what I'm trying to think of, and you don't want your bird to bite into that and get electrocuted. You also don't want your bird, you don't want to be flying near a power plant, right? You don't want your bird to go into these unsafe areas where they could get electrocuted. Or, you know, there's a bird that we've flown with and know very well who bit into a power line, and as shocking as it is, no pun intended, the bird survived. It lost part of its upper mandible, but the really good thing is that when it bites, it doesn't hurt anymore.
Oh my god.
True story. It's great. He's a great bird. Well, let's talk about, these are all things that are like very common mistakes that people have made that with a little bit of forethought would solve that.
I know, and there's also, there have been topics where we feel like we shouldn't have to point it out, but then we end up hearing about it and we're like, oh, I guess maybe we should have said that in a video somewhere. But
yeah,
flying your bird outside at night in the dark.
I'm noticing a recurring theme on one of these trainers.
Like, you know, I would hope that you
bird
guys
got eaten by an owl.
Would understand that parrots don't see so well at night. It's, I don't even know why. I feel like I shouldn't even have to explain it. But obviously, there's need for it. But owls do see really great at night.
Yeah.
So just when the odds are stacked against your bird, like the windmill thing, flying in the dark. I mean, maybe your bird made a really great flight at night one time and you were super impressed and thought that it could see really well at night, but I guarantee you it can't see better than an owl or a bird that's literally designed to hunt at night. Birds have very terrible night vision. They definitely, you know, they can see a full spectrum of light that we can't, so infrared, all that kind of stuff they can see, but that doesn't mean that they have night vision. Unless you light up your entire property with infrared lighting, then yeah, you could theoretically fly your bird at night to you because you have artificial lighting, but it's stupid because owls can see way better. No, there's just been a lot of accidents, and obviously we all learn from mistakes, right? So well, not all of us, not that person. We learn from our mistakes as well as the mistakes of others. So it's unfortunate that some mistakes are made that could have been avoided, and that's kind of the point of this, is that we want to make sure that those sort of things are avoided and you guys are aware of them. Maybe that was news to you that your bird doesn't see well at night, like who knows. So they're also not great swimmers. Thanks. So toilet seats down. Toilet seats down for indoor, and don't fly near the ocean or lake if your bird's not capable of swimming really well, long distance, or if you aren't set up for success with everything that we always talk about, making sure that the treat value, food motivation, everything that you need to do your outdoor flying safely, make sure that that's set up for success. And that one's legit. That one actually happens more often than not even from being outside, but from people in Florida with those amazing netted pool areas. I've heard so much of birds that are just learning to fly that end up in the pool, and luckily they safely get out. Who knew that macaws could actually swim a little bit? Yeah, they can swim a little bit. Little bit. So, you know, we've heard those stories where the bird gets out of the pool and it's amazing. We even had somebody, one of our clients in Australia, whose bird got out and ended up in part of a lake and was able to swim out of it. But we've also had clients where they improperly clipped their birds and decided to free fly them on an island and they couldn't swim. So it's just, again, it always comes back to risk management. Are you doing something out of the best interest and safety of your bird, or are you trying to look real cool? And are you set up for success for that day? That's something that we say all the time, and just even indoor training sessions. Set yourself up for success with a training session. Don't interact with the bird if it's not set up for success, because every interaction is a training session, whether you like it or not. So that's kind of the big thing on that. But let's keep this moving forward to, what about those locations like the lamp that has electrical cables built into it that you don't want the bird? These off-limit locations that are maybe a little bit less obvious, but it just annoys you that your bird goes there, right? And first of all, you can look at, like, why is your bird going there? Is it because it's
spring or fall and it's resembling a nest, and your bird is hormonal because maybe the sleep schedule's off, or it's that time of year for the bird and it's trying to fly up to the top of the cupboards to build a nest and becomes territorial.
Talking about Rocco?
Rocco does like it up there.
He doesn't build a nest. He doesn't become territorial.
He actually gets really sweet when he's like, he flies in the garage and comes over by the door, and it's very nesty looking, but he comes over and wants to be pet.
He's a nice hormonal toucan.
Yeah, maybe that's all it is. Yeah. So let's look at those kind of things, and the answer on how you deal with these things will surprise you, right? So okay, let's look at this. So tops of cupboards. That was one we just dealt with.
Or near any sort of electric.
That was with Katie, right?
Stuff. Katie.
With our fly student?
Oh, well, yeah, but also One Day Miracles, it was with Gandalf. That was the bird's name.
Gandalf.
And Michelle. Michelle is the human's name.
Yeah.
I remembered a human's name.
Yes. Yay! Win for Jamie. So, a blue and gold macaw,
African gray.
the African gray, those are both indoors. So, a cupboard flyer, lamp flyer, and then...
I would say Rasta, when I worked with Rasta, the Alexandrian. I mean, it didn't bother me, but he went up, where the Conures went up.
Oh, yeah. We were living in a theme park. They were like, well, we have a mobile home we can put you in. And so they did, and they were tearing it down to turn it into part of a paintball park the next year. So it didn't matter if the birds literally destroyed the entire house. So
it didn't bother me, but I could see if, it was a normal person living in the house, and it was an issue.
Not a normal person.
Not a normal person.
No.
So there's places like that, and there's people's stuff that are nice, and,
Yeah, and then there's outdoors too, right? So trees, cars, other people, those are three big ones.
The ground.
For the outdoor flies. Well, ground, so if you've got a little... Australian pigeon like we have, the pink rosies, they like to go to the ground. They're ground foragers. But a macaw shouldn't be allowed to... Hey, would you stop interrupting?
Sorry.
Like a macaw, in my opinion, shouldn't be allowed to just walk on the ground out of your control. So, you'll see videos of us with Comet letting him walk across the ground or walking back to us because he missed a flight or something. So there's a situation where it is the means of transportation for some birds. But
it's Comet.
Yeah. But it shouldn't be something that's like, hey, I'm not interacting with my bird properly, and so it's just ignoring me and it's on the ground.
Or you send it to fly and it just goes straight to the ground and walks away from you. Like, that's an issue.
Yeah.
So it's a different type of behavior, and hopefully you guys understand what we're going for. We're going for the undesired, right? The unintentional undesired.
So, as we kind of hinted to, and some of you guys that have followed us a little bit longer will know what the answer is, but it's just simply train that behavior. So, for the example of Gandalf going to this hanging lamp with electrical cables, it annoyed Michelle so much that I remember how scared she was. I said, well, here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to train him to fly off of there. And she's like, but isn't that going to increase that he goes there? And the behavior isn't so much that the bird's going there. The behavior that she's more concerned about is getting him off of there safely.
Because he was becoming obsessive to the point where she was using positive punishment. So she was putting things that would scare him onto the lamp, which she hated as well because it was a really cool looking
and then there's like towels hanging
really
off
pretty.
of this.
And then she had just rags hanging on it. And she would toss rags up there. She would keep rags up there. And if that rag didn't scare him, they would toss another one up there. And it was just becoming really ridiculous. And what they were accidentally doing was desensitizing him to the rags.
Yeah.
Because it was more worth it for him to be there. And they were making it more fun and interesting. And I think that's what people kind of forget, is that when there's a thing that's off limits, making a big deal about that thing and a reaction and making it like, no, you can never go there, just makes that thing way more interesting to a bird. Makes it way harder to get them
and to people
away from it. Yeah. And I will say, in one of my videos on YouTube, I have JINX on my shoulder and I'm wearing this sweatshirt that has drawstrings and a little metal circle around where the drawstring. A grommet, thank you. And JINX starts pulling at the grommet, and I know that eventually, by the time I'm probably not done with that video, he's gonna have it undone. Well, I don't want to argue with him and tell him not to do it, because that could get me bit, and I would have to come up with a very good reward, which I didn't have in my hand at the time to trade him. So I decided, okay, I know where the treats are. Once he eventually gets the grommet off, I will then trade him a nut for the grommet, because that will be super worthwhile. All that's really interesting about it right now is breaking it. So once he breaks it off, he's not going to be as interested in it and he will trade me. And so that's what happened. He broke it off. I got a nut. I asked him to come off my shoulder, which he did. He had the grommet in his mouth, which is literally a piece of metal, not something you want your bird to play with. And I traded him for a nut and just got rid of the grommet. I didn't freak out and say like, no, you can't have that, or try to like yank it out of his mouth. That would have got me bit. That would have made it so that he would hang on to that thing for dear freaking life, and then I'd be really screwed.
Yeah.
But it just, try not to make those things so, oh my gosh, I want that too, is kind of how I think it comes across. And then I think of the seagulls that are mine, 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 and it's like this war. So I kept my calm, cool, collected self and thought like, oh, I don't really want that grommet, but if you want this nut more than you want the grommet, and he did, and then I just threw the grommet away, and it just didn't play a role anymore. But there was no big freak out, there was no big reaction. So I think that's really key when your bird goes places, and I think a lot of people make it more fun than they should.
Yeah.
On accident.
There's that method, and then there's training birds to come off of the cupboards. So with a new flight student of ours, that was one of the issues, and so we said, hey, this next session, when you're most likely to succeed, meaning that the food management is in the proper safe range, that's you've got a little extra motivation because the bird hasn't had breakfast yet, just very simple basic stuff. And I said, start your training session with descending flights from the cupboards. And what happens is the cupboards no longer become the game because
they're not as high value as the treat reward,
yeah,
as that engagement with the person.
Yeah, and so they're getting that enrichment through the physical training, and now you're teaching the bird a different acceptable way. So if the bird goes to the cupboard, you don't have to worry, you just call him back and he comes down. So there's that for the cupboards or a lamp or anything unwanted. And the same thing translates to outdoor flight. TUSA was notorious because his very first flight, and this happened with Tango too, their very first flights were like, I don't know how to stop a tree. So as you guys know, when animals learn a behavior with too high of a motivation, i.e., crap, I can't stop, tree, that becomes the new learned behavior. Now, fortunately, and it's very difficult to untrain that. And so what happened with Tango and TUSA is they'd fly, they get tired, they just look for a tree. Well, it's very difficult to get a bird back once it's discovered it's in a high tree and it doesn't want to come down because it doesn't understand the skills yet to do so. So again, looking at it from a step back, like as annoying as that is to have the bird constantly go to the tree, it's only annoying because the next part of that is that you can't get him back, right? So it's not that the tree should be banned, it's the bird should be banned from the tree if he can't come back. And so just simply train the bird to come back. So again, just like with the cupboard situation indoors, the very first training session of the day outside, the very first repetitions, I should say, for us with TUSA, and this is the same recommendations we gave to Ashlyn and David for Tango, was to place Tango in the tree or TUSA in the tree and do those first recalls from the tree. One, you're giving the bird experiences to fly out of a tree so it understands it. Second, you can make it slightly more challenging each and every time by, branch selection for a parrot is interesting. In the very beginning, babies will try to land on a perch the size of my pinky, and then they fall. And so that's one way you can recover a bird from a tree is they try to land on a branch that can't support their weight and they fall. But then what you can do is you can start to push the bird further and further into the tree behind other limbs and foliage, so the bird has to figure out how to come out of that to make that recall. And the key to this is that you're setting yourself up for success. I'm not placing the bird in the tree and running 80 yards away. I'm also, with the cupboards, I'm not putting the bird in the cupboards and standing straight down, because a straight down flight's almost impossible for a bird that's just learning. And at the same time, you may need to go further away in the house to get a less of an angle, or less steep of an angle for your bird to fly down to you. So there's different ways of looking at that. You want to put yourself in the spot where the bird is the most likely to fly back to you.
The easiest flight, really.
Yeah, the easiest. And then slowly add to the difficulty of it by, if it's on a cupboard, come closer and closer so the bird has to make a steeper flight. If it's in a tree, push the bird in behind more and more stuff so eventually the bird understands, hey, if I do land in the tree, which is okay. If you're tired and you're crashing or avoiding a hawk or something, you got to crash into a tree or whatever it is, That's not the issue. The issue is I need the bird to come out, and the bird has to learn how to come out based on experience, and you can use your experience as a trainer to put the bird in there in more and more difficult ways. So you're building the confidence, you're desensitizing it, and you're teaching it how to come out of that tree.
Yes. Yeah, and it's actually a really cute process to see, because when you start putting a bird just on a branch that's real obvious right there's no foliage, it's a very easy flight to come out of. But once you start like digging them in there and you start seeing them climb and find their way out, and they poke their head and they're like, oh yeah, this is a good spot, and they can actually launch, it teaches your bird a lot about how to navigate a tree and how to come out of a tree easier than if they've never done it. They end up in it and then they're like, oh my gosh, so it's a fun process actually to go through, I feel like. And we documented all of Tango's process in Moab when he was going through that, so if you haven't checked that out, Tango has his own playlist on our YouTube channel.
So here's the big question that I know a lot of you are thinking, all right, if I put the bird in the tree and recall him out and I'm giving him treats, doesn't that mean that I'm reinforcing for being in a tree? No, you're reinforcing for the bird coming out of the tree. Just as with Michelle, her concern was if Gandalf was on this lamp, the lamp was already self-reinforcing, just as the tree was self-reinforcing because it rescued him from, faulty brake lines, right? So the bird is getting rewarded for coming to you, from leaving whatever you put the bird on. So as long as, and this is the big part of why this works, as long as you're not flying the bird back to the cupboard, you're not flying the bird back to the lamp or to the tree, you are not encouraging the bird to go into those areas. In fact, you are only encouraging the bird from leaving those areas, coming to you. That's a huge difference. So if you are finding things that are off limits, don't toss your bird back to that area to save you the 13 steps it takes to get there and the effort to climb to a certain area to put the bird on the cupboards or whatever your situation may be. The key is go physically put the bird there, then get to the spot where you're most likely or it's easiest for the bird to make that flight, reward that, slowly make it difficult in small approximations, small steps, just like you did if you're teaching the spin or the wave or even the step up. It's little baby steps. And those are kind of the Cliff Notes key things that are going to make it so you can help have a sense of control over these off-limits locations. I
think the other really valid point to add to that is that you're never adding the food reinforcement to those locations. So for example, if you find that your bird is just coming right away, he picks up on the fact that like, oh, I get rewarded for coming off of this, and it's a Velcro bird and you just can't get away. So you do not want to revert to putting your bird on the cupboard, giving it a treat there, and then to give yourself time to get back. That is like a totally no-go. That's not what we want to do. The reinforcement of the food should only come from you because, again, as Dave mentioned, those places are already a treat. They're already reinforcing for whatever reason. The bird's going there, right? So it's reinforcing.
So that's perfect example of like, if you're having a hard time getting the bird back onto the cupboard, perfect.
Yay!
Right? So don't like
count your blessings and walk away.
Yeah, or if you're trying to put the bird in the tree and he doesn't want to go there, then great. Like that's the mission accomplished. Yeah. There's one other.
Hello.
So there's one other part of that I totally forgot.
Sorry. Can I help you remember? Bubba. Am I helping?
Not at all.
Was it something about...
Oh, so it's how you put the bird onto that tree. So if Jamie mentioned, okay, you've got Velcro bird here, and you put the bird onto the tree limb, and he's facing you, and you're trying to get back quickly, so he makes that flight, and you're struggling there, just simply turn the bird around. So when you put him on the tree or the perch, he's not facing you. So now you're adding the extra 180-degree turn from to turn around to see you to then make that flight.
Gives you time.
That'll give you that extra time to get there.
Ooh, good one. That's a good one. I would not have thought of that, but we use that so much. That was good. Good job, babe.
Thanks.
You're so good at this.
Hello.
We should do it professionally.
Oh, that just got awkward.
Yeah. Do you feel like we covered the whole topic? I feel like we did.
I think so.
I thought that was a good one.
Yeah.
We don't really have any outtakes. We're getting better.